ain't sleeping till Hollywood, Hollywood. We ain't sleeping.
Hello, hello, hello. It's your girl, Gaelyn Smith. This week I am flying solo on the No Sleep to Hollywood podcast because my dear co-host Caleb, y'all know it's cold and flu season and it's snatching out a podcast host. And unfortunately, Caleb is one of them. But we're going to be excited to talk to him when he gets back. But for those of you who this is your first time listening, this is the No Sleep to Hollywood podcast. We're not sleeping until we make it in Hollywood. And while we're up, we will be discussing the state of the industry and our place in it. And today's topic is a little juicy, okay? It's a little country, it's a little thick. Today, we are going to be talking all about Fat Ham, specifically the studio theater production of which I am a part of. I play Opal in the show. And today, we have a super special guest, new friend of the podcast, new friend of mine, castmate, basically like my brother, who I'll be going to bother during the shows. We have my castmate, Thomas Walter Booker, in the house.
What's good? What's good? Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for coming on, friend. It's gonna be a good time.
Yeah.
Me and Thomas, all we do is kiki, so it's gonna be great. But I want to read Thomas's bio because other than being my friend, he's also a very talented, successful human being, and y'all need to know about him. So we're gonna read this bio. Thomas Walter Booker is an actor, writer, producer, and filmmaker born and raised in the nation's capital, Washington, D.C., period. He has guest starred on episodes of FBI and Blue Bloods. His off-Broadway credits include the 2023 Pulitzer Prize finalist for drama on Sugarland at the New York Theater Workshop. Regional credits include the 2022 Pulitzer Prize Award winner for drama Fat Ham Studio Theater, One Night in Miami at City Theater, and Necessary Sacrifices at Ford's Theater. His film credits include Becoming, TikTok Challenged, and Giles. He is currently in pre-production for his debut film entitled Absent, and he is an alum of the Duke Ellington School of the Arts and SUNY Purchas's Acting Conservatory. You can find out more about Thomas at thomaswalterbooker.com and at thomaswalterbooker on Instagram. Thank you once again for coming to the podcast. And we're going to get into Fat Ham. So Fat Ham, like we said, 2022 Pulitzer Prize Award winner for drama, written by James Iams. Our production at Studio Theater was directed by just like one of the biggest names in the American theater right now. Like Taylor Reynolds is that girl, very much the GOAT. We have to stand her. But it's doing a lot of different things, very exciting things. So if you're paying attention to the American theater, you probably know James Iams as a playwright, and you probably know Taylor Reynolds as a director. But the show, Juicy is a Black queer Southern kid. He has a lot on his plate already when his father's ghost shows up demanding vengeance. As generations clash at the family's backyard barbecue, Juicy must face the legacies of violence he's been raised with and shape the man he wants to be. There are a lot of different log lines. That's one of the ones that we found. But I think beyond that, one of the things that people get most excited about is that Fat Ham is a Shakespeare adaptation. It's an adaptation of Hamlet. So Juicy's dad dies. His mama marries his dad's brother, also known as his uncle. And then his father comes back from the grave and he wants Juicy to kill his uncle. In the midst of all of this, it's a mess. It is very much
just trashy.
just raggedy. Just raggedy. But and on top of all of that, that's already like a lot to go on with. Juicy is a thick queer kid in the American South and is coming to terms with what it means to be a Black man, to be a Black queer man, how that impacts his relationships to his family. And so we're going to talk a little bit about the show, our process to doing the show, Thomas's career and journey and those things. So hopefully that was enough Hamlet 101 for y'all, because like I personally don't want to do too much Shakespeare. I just don't.
Yeah, Shakespeare kind of, not like actually Shakespeare.
Like. Right. And so one of the fun questions that I liked, would you call this an adaptation of Hamlet, or do you feel like it's like a completely new work that has like some Shakespearean influence?
I feel like it's still an adaptation just because of the amount of Shakespeare lines that are actually in the piece, but I feel like it's one of the smarter adaptations that we've seen in the past like few years, like with how slick James is with the Shakespeare. Like I have a line as Teal where I start talking about York, and I didn't read Hamlet when it was given to me all throughout high school, middle school, all that stuff, but I did see it at the public when they do Shakespeare in the Park this past year. And there was like a whole section about York, and I was like, Oh my God, that's where. Oh, I see. But like,
Yeah,
it's not really Shakespeare though. Like, cause it's you know what I'm saying. Like, we talking about like selling shoes for a funeral. Like, that ain't no that ain't no Shakespearean thing, you know.
right.
Yeah, but no, I still call it adaptation just because it has so much like Juicy has all those soliloquies that, and it's really smart because he did not use any of the like the
Right.
you know like the cliche ones like to be or to
There was
not
no
to
to
be or
be or
speak
not
to
to be.
speak.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was like thank God, man. Yeah, man, the play is like hundreds of pages long, man. There's all these other soliloquies that Hamlet got. Like just use something else, something new, you know.
And I think it's also funny, like when you think about the Shakespearean lines, because like there's also like those references, right? So like there's a moment like the Yorick, or there's a line when my character and my mother first come in and we're talking about, oh, we were at the preacher's daughter's baby shower. Who she marry? Some boy from Norway. The show Hamlet takes place in Norway. In the context. So how I read that line, you just caught it? Did you just catch it?
I just caught that.
Ah!
I was just like, we talking about Norway because it's you know it's Hamlet, it's Shakespeare, like it's white people something, you know, like
The show's supposed to take place in Norway. And then what I always do, because like the way Rabbi says it, in my head, what I've translated it to mean for Opal is that the boy's not from Norway, is that the girl was studying abroad and they met in Norway. Cause like I just feel like I'm like, she met him during their study, but like I'm like, he's not from Norway. Like I just feel like this is not like I want Rabbi to be confused in that moment. And we'll talk a little bit more about
yeah.
characters in a second. Actually let's get into it now. So the families, we broke this down in rehearsal one day. So we have the
Yes,
Hamlets and we have
the
the
Hamlets,
Johnsons.
the Johnsons,
We named them the Hamlets for obvious reasons. I feel like that makes sense. So you have
the
uh
Hamlet family.
right, you know what I'm saying? Like you got Juicy,
Yeah,
you got his mama Tidra, you got his daddy Pap and his uncle Rev, and then you have his
yep.
cousin Theo. So Thomas plays Juicy's cousin on that side of the
Hmm.
family over there. Then the Johnsons, that's me and my family. You got Opal, her brother Larry, and their mama Rabby. And Opal, Larry, Rabby, and Juicy all grew up together. And so
Hmm.
this play takes place the morning after Tidra and Pap get married, which is a week after Juice's daddy died. And it's the first time that all of the youngins are getting back together to be able to, celebrate this strange event, but also just like getting to know each other and getting to talk with each other. And Thomas, I would love if you could talk a little bit about um, Tio's role in the story, like how you see,
Mm,
like what do you feel like he brings to the story? How does he kind of move us through these,
mm,
really difficult themes? And then also, if you have any thoughts about how it relates to the Shakespeare
hmm.
with the reference of Horatio, and if not, we can ignore that part.
Yeah. Um, Tio's role in the show feels to me like both the clown and the fool. The difference being like the clown is usually, you know, like the one that's always making the jokes, might be a little bit behind the curve, but never really necessarily has anything to say. And this is where I say like he has like elements of the fool mixed in because the fool
Mm,
is usually very like wise and like may say like off the wall crazy stuff, but then always has that like little sliver of like, oh, what you just said was really deep, actually. So I feel like he always like teeters the clown and the fool like constantly. If I mean like besides the fact that you know the nigga name is T.O. and you know Horatio, like you know what I'm saying, like that's the real connection there,
right.
and yeah, and Horatio in Hamlet actually is like a very much like hype party boy, like he really is like there for like a good time, like so I feel like James has done like a very like beautiful job of like blending those two things and just like making Tio like kind of like his own type of character, you know?
Hmm. I like that. I think for me, I think about
Yeah,
like Opal being like the Ophelia of the show, and I'm a little bit more
yeah,
familiar with Hamlet, but the idea that in the Hamlet version, Ophelia is driven mad when Hamlet doesn't want to be with her and then drowns herself, right? Versus like
yeah.
this Opal is very she kind of pulls from that and then makes it her own thing. I think Opal doesn't necessarily get like an ending. Like we don't really know what happens to Opal, kind of the way that the show ends. But I feel like she's not just like waiting for somebody to save her or waiting for permission to be herself. Like she's just experimenting and throwing things at the wall and trying to figure herself out. And then, there's like a lot of like conversation I think with Opal about like Black feminine rage and what that looks like and
Yeah.
who's allowed to be angry and how that gets to look. So I think
Mm.
that's what I think Opal for me has been giving. Everybody knows I'm a huge Beyonce fan. And when I think
Yeah.
about Opal, listen, if you know, you know. I love my girl. I stand Beyonce, Giselle Knowles Carter, mother of House Renaissance, absolutely. But I think about her song, Don't Hurt Yourself. And like I think like when I think of Opal, I think of that song of just like what it means to be very, very angry and still have to exist in the world. And I think to an extent that's what Juicy feels in a lot of the ways and spaces. But I think,
Yeah.
Opal, she really is presenting that. I think she's also, a repping for, the masculine of center girlies who just are gay and don't want to be wearing dresses and don't want to necessarily be perceived as feminine in the ways that we've made that an oppressive title. And so that's what Opal like to do. Opal like to rep for the girls
Mm.
who really could care less with being pretty and are really just more so concerned with themselves. Um,
Yes.
Trying to figure it out. I think it's funny because we just did show 49 yesterday.
Whew.
We were supposed to be done at show 45, I think. And so
Something like that.
we've been extended till January 14th, y'all. We've been doing the show since the end of October. So it's been a long
Yeah,
time.
yeah, come out.
It's been a long time, but I think, like for both of us, Thomas and I have done a couple of the talkbacks. Like your characters are still teaching you things the longer you do the show. And so I'm wondering if at this moment, at going into show 50, by time y'all hear this, it's like show 60 probably. But I would love to know what TO is teaching you this week that might be new from previews and new from beginning of rehearsals.
Mm. Yeah, T.O. is really teaching me like that just because this is the way that you've always done a thing doesn't mean that that has to be always the same way that you do that same thing like that. There's that line where he's like talking about inherited trauma and just like how like we can all get caught in our patterns of our everyday lives and always want to do the same things because it just brings us comfort to like know what the next thing is because I mean I feel speaking for myself I feel like it's scary to not know what the next thing is
Yeah.
so just breaking out of the what is that the lack mentality of
Mm,
that like oh if I don't know what the next thing is then my life is over versus like well what could my life be like what if you
mm,
imagine the world differently like there's so much positivity around you just have to be able to put your mind in that space to tap into it.
mm, mhm. I like that. I think
Yeah.
Opal right now is teaching me the power of silence and the power of
Mm.
in your own thoughts. I think there's the first juicy Opal scene, for those who have seen it or have read it, is a lot of Opal expressing like some of her suicidal ideations or things or letting people know she likes girls, like things that she has spent real time thinking about and have considered. Like it's new to Juicy and the audience, but it's the sharing is new for her, but the thought isn't. And I just think about, I think you were even saying this yesterday, maybe during the talk
Mm-hmm.
back and the response of like, we spend so much time with like stuff in our ears, whether it's music, podcasts, television shows. They know me, I'm chronically online, TikTok, like all of these different things that are like in our heads. And how easy it is to like one day look up and not have any original thoughts because everything is just what you're
Mm.
putting inside of your own head. And so I'm learning the power of just like sitting in silence and not necessarily like meditating, but just like
Yeah.
being silent and just sitting around and like just being like, what comes to my head? What do I think about when I'm not entertaining myself?
Mm.
Is what I'm thinking about right now. I think that's what I'm learning. I feel like earlier in the process, I was learning a lot about just like what it means to take up space physically in like ways that like
Mm-hmm.
Opal moves very different than me and trying to figure out what that is. But I think right now, that's what I'm that's what I'm getting from Miss Opal. Um,
Okay.
you know what I'm saying? Um,
Yeah.
one of the big themes of the show, particularly for I think really for all the youngins, I would say in some ways they all kind of tap into themes surrounding what it means to be queer in this time. right? You have
Mm.
Juicy and Larry who who are characters who identify as queer and are young men who are attracted to men. You have Opal being like, I like girls. Tio never really defines the sexuality, but like
Mm-hmm.
the whole thing of like you kissing a gingerbread man and you
Yeah,
like
yeah,
it
yeah.
and you
It's
keep going with it. Like there's some
pansexuality,
fluidity
just
there.
openness. Yeah,
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 there's an
just
openness. I think
openness to whatever comes to you. Yeah.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I would love to talk about why do you think it's important to tell these stories, particularly now and particularly as Black actors?
Mm. It's it's always important, and I feel like especially important at this juncture. Just even in theater, I feel like we all exist in this bubble of, like, the LGBTQ community is very much present and very much like the backbone and pillar of the theater community. Like they go
Mhm.
kind of hand in hand. So we're always like in this bubble of like always forward thinking, progressive, being open to new experiences, new people, new ideas. Um, Versus like so we had a student matinee yesterday that was
Whew.
with Ballou High School in DC, in Southeast DC, and it was just a wake up call for me in realizing like how much homophobia is prevalent in our community. Like, not and I say a wake up call, like I was always very much aware of that, but it
Mhm.
yesterday just really just put it in my face that like,
Yeah.
oh, the work that us doing this play is necessary for those kids because they are uncomfortable by what they're seeing on stage, and there's nobody in there. This is an assumption. There's nobody in their parental teacher,
Right.
mentor, like, what I'm saying, and somebody higher than them questioning why they feel that way.
Yeah.
So I just feel like it's very much important for us to continue to do work like this that disturbs the ground, that makes people uncomfortable, because in that uncomfortable space, there is the room for them to grow as people. So
Hmm.
yeah,
Hmm.
and anything that, like, it's we're attacking systemic issues here, so
Yeah.
it's not there's not like a one point in, or like if you knock out this thing, then the problem is fixed. It takes a whole bunch of little fires everywhere
Not
to
the movie.
really, what I'm saying. I've
Not the
never
movie.
seen
Yeah,
that
the
show, so
book.
so, so don't even try to quote me on that. I don't know that show. I have not seen it. My bad. That's
It's a
crazy.
good book. It's a good movie. Well, I saw the show.
Yes.
I saw the show. I didn't read the book. I was like, I don't want to lie. I don't want to lie about what
Right,
we are.
right, right, right. That's what I'm saying. I don't know that topic like that, so let me not.
Yeah. No, but you brought up a couple interesting things. And they roll in some other questions that I had on here because obviously we Thomas mentioned it. We had a student matinee. It's our second student matinee, and it was very different than our first student matinee. I would say it was very different from any audience we've had. In that not only were they loud in terms of like chatter, but the things that were being said. And not to harp on that particular one experience, but kind of to broaden it back up, the demographics of the American theater often are hostile to Black shows. And I think for me, I had been
Mm,
more so thinking about what it meant to do a Black show in front of white audiences and not really thinking about what
mm,
it meant to do a Black queer show in front of Black audiences. And I would love to kind of, I guess, unpack like what is your um what is your experience in doing this show, right? For the types of
mm,
audiences that we've done it with. I mean, I can speak for me in knowing that like yesterday was really hard.
mm-hmm,
Yesterday,
mm-hmm.
'cause on top of some of the homophobia that was there was also a lot of, just very aggressive sexual comments that were just beyond inappropriate and
Yeah.
wild. Things that were said to and about me that will stay with me for a while, right? But then I think about when we've had white audiences where they don't laugh at nothing, or they
They
laugh
don't
too hard at the
respond.
lines where you saying nigga, or they're sitting there, if you're not watching this, you won't see it, but when they're
Just
aggressively
the.
staring at us with the crossed arms, like what has that been like as a performer? And can you talk
Mm,
about ways in which you prepare for that as a performer to
mm.
protect your mental health?
Well, for me, like, performing in front of the white audiences has been like I mean, like, throughout most of my career, most of the audiences that I've ever seen have always been white. So that's something that I'm just always cognizant of, like just going into the performance. So like I mentally prepare myself with that, knowing that these American theater institutions cater to the older white demographic, white
Mhm.
male and white women, like, um so for your mind, you always just mentally prepare yourself for that. When it's like they when they actually do respond to black work and you're never really sure what they're laughing at, it's one of the it's definitely an awkward feeling because it's like damn, like I've always wanted to tell stories. I've always wanted to be an actor. Like this is the thing that I've always wanted. But
Mhm.
we're living in this American society where most of the audiences, I've been blessed to have mostly black projects, black plays written by black people for black people.
Mhm.
So it's always been like this weird like dissonance of like, so I was like, man, where the black people at, man? And it's part of that. It's part of the institution. Like the tickets aren't accessible. They're not like affordable for the average black person. Like most of these people have subscriptions to the thing that they paid
Right.
for in advance. And most black people, they're not gonna subscribe to a whole season of something because it's gonna be like 4 or 5 white shows with like 1 or 2 black shows. So it's
If
like
that.
just if
If the
if
one.
that if the one, I will say, like, I feel like American theater has been doing better about that, like at least just having one, but it always does feel like that token one,
Yeah.
versus like I have yet to see a besides the National Black Theater, which obviously,
Right.
in New York, and that's their mission. But besides them, I haven't really seen like an all black season from
Never
any
seen.
American theater.
And I will say, like,
Yeah.
I remember going to Syracuse, our drama program, for those of y'all who don't know, mini brief tutorial. I went to Syracuse, got my BFA in acting, got my master's in TV, radio, and film. But the Syracuse drama program shares a building with Syracuse Stage, which is the regional theater of upstate New York. And their season, it was always so funny to me. The first 2 years I was there, the Black show always happened during Black History Month. Like it was, you had the one and it was only during Black History Month. Like it couldn't be in October. You know what I'm saying? Like it was always that. And so I think like
Shaking my
we're
head.
moving past a point where the Black show is now no longer confined to Black History Month, but we are doing Black theater and Black shows at places that are not resourced for us, that are not marketing towards us.
At all.
You know, and I have found, like Thomas said, I mean, theater is predominantly white. I've been to predominantly white institutions, so there is a level of I'm learning in my 20s of like my identity as a black woman and as a black performer that I've always learned with an audience of whiteness. And so like unpacking like what are things that I do that are black but are black for white facing people. Like it's like trying to figure out what those parts of
Mm,
my identity have been. And so doing the show is so interesting. And you said something yesterday during the talk back that I would love if you could talk a little bit about more, because a kid asked you about like somebody asked you about the difference for audiences, and you said something about like you gonna do you regardless of the audience. And I think for me, like
right.
I swim in the land of I'm going to authentically play Opal, how I see her, how I've experienced her, what I've learned from her, for any audience. But even in yet and still in that, what I've been struggling with, I think maybe for the past couple of weeks, is that like I'm gonna be 100% authentically black and honest in telling this story. But then I go
Hmm.
home and sometimes I'm just like, ew, like that felt icky. And not because it wasn't authentic, but because it was authentic in front of people who don't have a vested interest in these stories.
Hmm.
Because there's an element, right? Like you said, like people subscribe to a whole season. Like some of y'all are just here because this was the show that was big on Broadway last year. Some of y'all are just here because it won a Pulitzer Prize. Some of y'all are just here because you spent your 300 or whatever dollars, however much it costs to subscribe for the season. So you're going to see every show. But there are a lot of like not necessarily here to see the humanity in this black story that is also a shared experience. And so I would love if
Hmm.
you could talk a little bit more because like you're just like, I'm gonna do me and I'm gonna do it. And like you have fun
Right.
regardless. And there are
Yeah.
days when I like, and there are days when I'm having fun, and there are days when I'm like, I'm not And you just seem to have fun regardless. So for the sake of the pod
Yeah.
and for Gaelyn, I just want to know how you do that.
It's something that's, I feel like, just like in my wheelhouse, something that I was always taught, like growing up in school, just like that the audience is going to be the audience, and the response that they're going to give you is the response they're going to give you. So you have to be able to give the audience the same level of performance each night. And I've I also like understand like what you mean by like taking in the audience's perspective into your own performance, but at the same time, like, that feels to me sometimes that, like, like, oh, if I'm talking to like a white person who's like a business executive, has a lot of money, like, I'm still gonna be like Thomas, born and raised in DC, you know what I'm saying, like, I had this experience. So like, either you're gonna like me for
Hmm.
me, or you're going to see me trying to do the Olympics and trying to morph and force my speech, my mannerisms, my charisma into a specific way that works for you. And I'm good. You know what I'm saying? Like, I feel like as
Right.
actors, we are transformational human beings. We're good at that. But so many of my friends, like, the conversations that we always have is that authenticity, and always making sure that you remain genuine to yourself, that you keep your own integrity as you navigate these spaces, because there's so much in our industry, like, I don't know, people talk about LA being like this, like, like
Yeah.
everybody's trying to get their thing, like it's fake,
Yeah.
so it's like you don't ever want your performance to be fake. you
Right.
want you want you want to be living 100% of the truth of what's happening in this moment. So it's like, and honestly, like, the fact that being able to give the opportunity to tell a Black story, and regardless of if they white or not, like, I'm like, listen, this ain't for y'all.
Right.
I'm with you, Opal. I'm with Juicy. I'm with y'all. Like, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
We're living this thing. If they get it, they get it, and if they don't, they don't. And you can tell who don't get
You could
it.
tell. You
You
could
could
tell because
tell.
it'd be real quiet in there. So,
Even if they're not responsive, they may still get it. It's just in
but
a different
sometimes,
way.
because
I like
we've
I,
had some
I like
audience
I like the noise. What's Cedra say? I like noise. Commotion
commotion
makes
makes
me
me happy,
happy. I
and
like it. Yeah.
I think that's it. It's like I love because there's the line, right? Like the noise of yesterday, we didn't enjoy that noise. But like I
That's
love
having, yeah.
right. It's like I love the snaps, I love the claps, I love when audiences are responsive because it lets us know that you're there. It also makes the show more fun. This show is a tragedy, I guess, but it also is a comedy. Like it is a
Yeah.
hilarious show dealing with some very trash and tragic situations and some really hard moments.
Yeah.
And I guess I would love to kind of talk a little bit about our rehearsal process, your
Hmm.
reflections on working with Taylor Reynolds, the GOAT.
Man,
Um,
that was such a
it
time.
was a time.
When I tell you, like, every director is different, and when I say, like, Taylor's directing style for me was some of the most calming stuff ever. Like, I felt like we we're all like children trying to learn how to walk. And
Mm,
she like, look, I don't know how to walk for you, but this might be something. You know
right.
what I'm saying? Like, and then we just try it. Like, and that's so much reflective of my training of, like, it's not about getting it right. It's not about making sure that you hit your mark right there at that exact moment, unless it actually, like, what's the word? You know what I'm saying? Like, clutters and,
Yeah.
like blocks up, like, people's movement. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, we're just trying stuff to see if it works, to see if it lands. Yeah, that rehearsal process, it felt so quick. It felt
Yeah.
so
Because it was
quick.
just
I mean, like,
so fun. Like, I feel like there was a lot of
mhm.
fun. Like, I mean, yes, we did blocking and stage combat, but
Yeah,
like we spent a lot of time talking about the themes of the show. Like, that's why it's so funny when
yes,
when people's first comments to me after the show are about Shakespeare, because like when I tell y'all we really didn't talk about that dead white man.
we did not.
Like,
We did
other
not.
than to be like, "Oh, Juicy speaking in verse right here, and that's from Hamlet." We didn't really talk about
That's
like
it.
We didn't talk about iambic pentameter. Taylor was like, I didn't even reread the play. Like, we didn't do, any of that. It was a lot more like we just did a lot of like, I don't know, like talking about our families and talking about like how Black
Mm-hmm.
people gather communally and like what is grief, and like we talked about these themes from a place of like always in relationship to what it meant to be Black in America. And so I feel like I
Yeah.
sometimes forget that it's Shakespeare, but we just had a lot of fun. Like my castmate Matthew and I roller skated during breaks in the theater. Like we were just having a good old time. And in that,
Mm-hmm.
we created this play, which like for me, it's like such a treat. And I'm also super spoiled because like this is my regional debut. And like to one be extended like 4 times in your regional debut, bonkers, wild,
Get
does not
that. Get
crazy
that.
times, but also to like do it in a room that's like a Black cast with an amazing director and to just have like this much fun and this much warmth. Like, I'm like, dang, everybody else, y'all gonna need to step your game up when I get there because we was having a good time. So
Yeah.
y'all gonna have to turn up. So obviously, Thomas, you and I both are alum of the Studio Acting Conservatory, and are people who have taken acting seriously from a youngish age. I mean, you went to Duke Ellington, which is a performing arts high school in DC. We
Mm-hmm.
both got our BFAs in acting, those things. But for people who are thinking about pursuing a career in the arts, both of us
Mm.
also being multi hyphenate and multi passionate
Yeah.
artists, what is like the advice that you give to people when they're like, yo, I'm young, I'm trying to do what you're doing? Like, what is
Mm-hmm.
that advice that you give to people?
So it's always the cliche one there. Like even if you Google it, you're gonna find the same answer, and it's take a class
Yeah.
because there's so many people that are doing the thing that have taken a class. So to think that you're just gonna wake up one day off the street randomly and just be like, oh, I'm gonna hop in this thing, I'm gonna kill it. You might got some talent,
You might.
but you might got some talent, but you going up against people that have talent and know how to do the thing. And it's the marriage of the talent and knowing how to do the thing, so that way that you can. It's like I try to relate it to jazz because that's just some of my teachers, some of my father's thing.
Mhm.
It's like jazz is improvisation in a framework.
Yes.
So it's like the training, taking classes is so that you get your framework, so that your talent knows how to just improvise, move however you need it to move.
Mm,
But yeah, no, definitely take a class, and once you feel like you're ready enough from your classes, you've taken enough study. Um, just start submitting yourself. Make sure you get your headshot and resume for actors specifically. Get your
yeah.
headshot resume. If you have some self tapes that you've done, you can use those. Like take like 30 seconds from each tape. Use that for a reel because that is also submittable as well.
Yeah.
And then just start submitting to places, agencies, theaters. For TV and film stuff, that's why you really need an agent
Right.
because it's not like in the public domain. But like as far as like DC theater, all of the DC theaters have their casting emails on their website.
And they do
I've
check
made a spreadsheet and they do check them and they respond. Like especially like if the season that they're casting for or a show that they're casting for in that moment is like oh my god, we just got a headshot resume from this person.
right.
Call them in, and you never know. Like an audition, especially like in theater, like you have an opportunity. Like it's there are situations and stuff like that
Right.
where like yes, like they have their people that they've chosen already beforehand, but most of the time like an audition is an opportunity to get in there and possibly book the job.
Yeah. And
it's
I
a
think
never
also,
it's a never yeah.
I find it so funny. I feel like acting, specifically acting, not even like writing and directing, but specifically acting is like a thing that people feel like they can just hop into. And I always tell people, I'm like, so you like if this was football, you thought you was gonna be at home, chilling on the couch, and for the Super Bowl, you gonna be the team starting quarterback. Sounds really like impossible and silly when I say it that way.
Right.
But with acting, niggas is like, I'm funny. I can just and it's
I can
like,
remember some lines. I can remember, yeah. I'm like,
and then you get up there and they're like, hello,
oh.
my name is like
Yeah,
all
yeah.
crafts. I think all arts are all crafts, whether it's sports, playing
Mm,
music, being an actor, like all of these things. Shoot, you can't just go be a doctor and start cutting people open. Like you have to train and study and work really hard to do it. And so like I always say, like, whether it's college, a conservatory program, or you just take every, drama class at your local theater for 2 years in a row, like getting that training and getting that foundation is super important. And then all the things that
Hmm.
you said, I will add, like, if you're in college, like, don't do like I did, but like if you're a drama like kid and you want to act, go be in all them student films, do all of them, and just do as
Yes,
many of them as
yes,
possible and get
yes.
that experience. Because one, you're getting the experience. Two, you'll have footage for your reel, hopefully, if the projects are good.
Yeah.
And three, if they're really good and they start getting submitted for things, you can also start to build your network being submitted for film festivals for something you did before you graduate. So always wanting to just do that and like having, a clear sense of what you want your career to be. I feel like those are like the big
Hmm.
ones that I usually
Wanted to
use.
add one
Go
more
ahead.
thing, and this is like paramount. It's about the people, man. It ain't about the project. It ain't about the money. It ain't about the resources. It ain't about the net. It's about the network. It's about
Right.
the people. You know what I'm saying? It's literally about like the people that you go to that you go to work with. You know what I'm saying? Like you make sure that you have a gentle and genuine heart and really care about the people that you're working with, because those relationships is what carries you through your career to the next thing. To you know what I'm saying? Projects come a dime a dozen. They come
Mhm.
just you working on something for like 2 weeks, it's gone. You working on something for a day, it's gone. But the people that you meet and that you connect with are the people that's your consistency.
And to the
Yeah.
point of what you just said, and we can just talk about this really quickly, because I know you're in pre-production, but like everybody that's working on your short film, from what I'm understanding, are folks you've known since like high school. You know what I
High
mean?
school,
Like,
yeah, high school and or friends of those people. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like your network will work for you, you know?
yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
Hmm.
yeah, all right. Last question, I guess, for you, Thomas, is 2024. We're getting to the end of Fat Ham, which
2024.
is crazy. But do we
Wow.
have anything lined up? We know we're doing the short film in the summertime.
Hmm.
But where else, if the people are trying to, see what you're doing, do we have
Hmm.
an idea yet? Are
Uh
we still moving?
well, you read it pretty good in the bio. You know what I'm saying? Like my website and my Instagram are the two places you can definitely keep up with me. I'm producing the short film right now. It's coming along very well. I have my team of producers. We have our DP, our director. I'm just very excited for it. I'm just in the trenches right now fundraising because
Child.
man, you always asking somebody for a dollar. You got a dollar.
Well,
You got you
look,
got you got some money.
we're gonna pray for you.
Listen. I'm not worried about it. You know what I'm saying? Like we gonna find the money. It's a good amount of artists on it already that are like very excited about the work. So I'm just very excited for that. I'm really excited to put my energy into that and really just focus on it. Because sometimes I be having a film day and then go to Fat Ham and I'm like, all right, forget all of that.
The
Forget
brain
all
is
that.
trying to do too much.
I was like, you need to focus on Tio. What does Tio want in this? What's going on with Tio in this first scene? Like, don't be thinking about the locations.
But that's the new problem where it's like you're working on a show, which is like an artistic output of a kind, right? Like you do have to put energy and
Yeah,
output into it. But then you have like that doesn't mean that the rest of your artistic brain stops. And so then you're thinking about like for me, it's like scripts for like scripts, and then it's like TikTok content and YouTube content, and for the podcast. And it's like it doesn't stop because you're doing one, and then you're just like, I'm tired. Or I feel like I'm going a little crazy sometimes. Like I'm just like,
yeah,
I don't know what to do with this. And then you get like a little like stack, you're like almost like creatively constipated because you're like, there's just so much that wants to come out and I don't have
yeah.
the ability to get it all out.
Right
This is
now,
new for me. I never expected
yeah.
this.
It's new for
So
me too. Like, yeah, like I've never been preparing for my own project while at the same time working on a project. And unfortunately, like that's where we are in our industry. Like most of our like the days of just being an actor are over. You
yeah,
know, I can't even
unfortunately.
say unfortunately or nothing like that. It really is just that's just what it is. It's
It's like it's
over.
not even
Like,
unfortunate. It is what it is.
and most people are multi hyphenate. It's not.
That's true.
There's very rarely that there's just somebody on this earth that's like, I'm an actor. I only know how to act. I have completely no interest in any other thing. There, even the people that we see on our screens be like, I kind of want to produce something over here.
Right.
I
I
kind of want to
produce,
write
I
something.
direct.
Yeah, I kind of want to do that thing over there. Like, you know what I'm saying? We're all multi hyphenate, and it's again like we were talking about earlier, just being open to those possibilities and really leaning into them. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we'll have Thomas back on sometime next year, and then maybe Thomas will tell us how to be not creatively constipated, because maybe he'll have learned something. Because I don't got it for us right now, but maybe we'll have learned by the time we talk next
Yes.
year. But Thomas, I want to thank you so much for coming on the podcast today. Make sure y'all follow Thomas on Instagram at Thomas Walter Booker. You guys can follow the podcast at No Sleep Till Hollywood. And of course, y'all can follow me at G Smitty with 2 T's and 4 Y's on anything with an at symbol. Thank y'all so much for listening. Caleb will be better and healthy. I'm speaking it into existence
Yes.
for us to do our final episode next week, which is going to be our 2023. It's 2023, right?
Yep.
2023 year-end review. We don't know what that looks like yet, but we're going to do something fun for you guys. It'll be our final episode, and then we'll be on hiatus for a couple of months, and then we'll see y'all back in 2024. But thank y'all so much for listening. Until next time, good night, good morning, bonjour, bonsoir. Bye, guys.
Thank
I
you.
forgot that I